Hello, explorers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident global citizens. My name is Colin, and as part of Reach the World's Endurance22 program, I'm going live with Endurance22 team member and Reach the World explorer, Tim Jacob. Hi, Tim. How are you today?
Hey, Colin, I'm great. So excited to be here with you all today.
Today, we're going to talk to Tim about packing his bags for the Endurance22 Expedition to Antarctica, and specifically to the Weddell Sea off of Antarctica. We're going to give Tim a chance to talk about all of the things that he's bringing with him, including heavy-duty equipment to stay warm, and also some really cool high-tech things that he's going to use to connect with classrooms like yours. And we'll also have time for all of you to ask Tim some questions about what he's bringing and what he expects on his journey to a very remote place. Tim, can you start by telling us a little bit about what you are bringing with you to the Weddell Sea?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. Like Colin said, my name is Tim. I am getting ready actually on Sunday to leave from where I live in Chicago and to fly all the way to Cape Town, South Africa. Very, very long flight to begin the Endurance22 Expedition. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about over the last few months is, what do I need to bring for an epic expedition like this? It's a big question. Sometimes it's easy to know what you need to pack for a journey. You're maybe just going to your grandparents' house for a couple days and you throw a couple clean clothes in a backpack and put your toothbrush in there and you're all set. But the idea of going from Chicago, where I live, as I said, to South Africa and then getting on a ship that's going to be going to one of the most remote, harsh, cold places on Earth for almost 40 days or more than 40 days is a totally different packing scenario. So I'm going to talk through today a little bit about how I've been packing. I want to show you I'm surrounded right here by some of my stuff that I'm going to bring with me. And then hopefully we can have some questions about packing, because I know many of you are working on the packing your bag, reach the world exercise, and hopefully some of the things we talk about today can help you with that. So to get started, I just wanted to say that when I do anything that involves a lot of steps, I do this thing called visualizing. I close my eyes and I imagine myself getting on the airplane in Chicago. What will I need to get on the airplane? I imagine myself landing in Cape Town. What am I going to need when I land there? And I imagine myself walking around on the ice of the Weddell Sea, and what will I need there? And as I do that, I start to come up with a list. I'm a list person. Some of you like to write things down so that you don't forget them. I actually have my packing list right here, and I've been working on this for several months. You can see I've got lots of notes on here. And then I had an extra sheet because I had forgotten some things that accidentally got thrown away. I had to pull it out of the trash. So this is my packing list. You can see there's a lot of stuff you need for a journey of this length. I have been talking to people that I know who have been to the Weddell Sea or have spent a long time on an icebreaker ship, because I have done neither of those things before now. And there are people who have, and they had some great, great tips about what I might need to bring. I heard from someone who was in the Navy for a while and spent a long time on ships, and he gave me some advice on what it's like to live on a ship for a long period of time. I met and talked to someone from the US Coast Guard who did some work on polar boats, or on boats, ice-breaking boats in polar regions, and he had some great tips for what you need to be comfortable and what you need to be successful in those places. I spoke to other explorers who regularly go to polar regions, and they gave me some good advice. So all of that sort of panned out in my packing list. And over the last few months, I've been checking things off my packing list. I just checked off one of the last things today. I got my final COVID test where they stick that thing up your nose. so that I have hopefully a negative result and can get on my airplane on Sunday. But let's dive right into some of the things I need. This is going to be a long journey, and I'm someone who likes to really know what I'm getting into. So one of the first things that I found and packed is a book. I don't know if you can read this, but this is a book that is basically the journal of the one and only American who was on Sir Ernest Shackleton's expedition, a man named William Bakewell. And he, funny enough, was from the Chicago area, just like me. So I feel like we have a little bit of a connection, William Bakewell and I. I'm excited to read his journal of his journey into the Weddell Sea while I'm making a journey from Chicago to the Weddell Sea myself. Hopefully my journey goes a little bit better than his did. Other things that I'm bringing with me, especially at the beginning of my trip, are things that you would bring on any big trip. Got my passport, just got it renewed, plenty of pages for a visa when I land in South Africa. That's good, essentially. You can't get into South Africa without a visa. And then there are a couple things that are a little bit new to the travel world this year and previous years. I've got a vaccine card, got my vaccines and my boosters. I'm all set to go from a with me COVID-19 perspective. And this is something that I had to do prior to even being able to join the ship. I had a very intensive medical exam, and I got this medical card from the US Coast Guard that said that I'm okay to live and work on ships. So that's a really kind of a special thing that I had to do to train and get ready for this ship, or for this journey. Now, that gets me to Cape Town, and that will get me, hopefully, as I'm visualizing this, it will get me onto the ship and underway out into the Weddell Sea area. Now, I have, as I said, never lived and worked for a long period of time on a ship at sea, but I know enough about it to know that the Southern Atlantic is a little bit choppy. It can be very wavy. The boat can shake a lot, and it's going to take us 8, 10, 12 days to get from Cape Town to the Weddell Sea. So I don't know how my body's going to respond to that, but I know many people get seasick. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with seasickness. It's when your body is just a little bit off and you get a little bit of an upset stomach. So one of the things I'm packing in my bag is ginger. Ginger is a natural root. When you grind it up into a powder, you can make a tea with it really easily. And it's supposed to help calm your stomach in a seasickness situation. I'm hoping that it will prevent me from getting sick. That will help me get to the Weddell Sea. Once we enter the Weddell Sea, I'm expecting the temperatures and the weather of the Weddell Sea to be a lot like it is in Chicago today, actually. I went outside to drop off my kids at school, and it was just a full whiteout. There's snow everywhere in Chicago today. It is cold. You can't see anything. The snow was coming up on my shoes and my legs about 6 inches today. And that's created a little bit of a problem for me because the clothes and gear that I have for cold weather is now packed in my bag. So I didn't really have what I needed to go outside today, but I'd rather keep it dry and ready for my packing today. But the good thing is that in a lot of ways, summer in the Weddell Sea is not that different from winter in Chicago. A lot of the things that I need to stay warm and stay comfortable in the Weddell Sea are things that I already had. So let me show you an example. These are my boots for Chicago, waterproof, insulated, come way up on your leg in case there's a lot of snow. I sure wish I would have had these when I went out this morning, but they're nice and dry, ready to go in my bag. As a fun packing tip for all of you who want to be really, really smart travelers as you go, the inside of these boots, I have big feet, so the inside of these boots have a lot of room. I fill up the inside of my boots with all sorts of things that I'm not going to need until I get to a colder climate. So you can see I've got some gloves, some glove liners here. I've got it's called the balaclava. It goes over your face and just sort of leaves a little bit of room for you to to peek out. It protects your neck, keeps your neck warm. I have my winter hat in here. I can fit a lot of stuff into this boot. And because I'm not going to need this boot or this wintry stuff until I get to the Weddell Sea, I can pack it all in there and shove it in the bottom of my bag, and I know it's all there for me when I get there. One of the other things that I've had to learn a lot about and think about is clothing. For those of you who've been reading about Ernest Shackleton and his expedition to Antarctica, you might come to the conclusion that their clothing at the time was not ideal for the Weddell Sea. They got wet really fast. They got really cold. A lot of the people in the expedition got frostbite because they just could never really get as warm and dry as they would like to be. And in the 100 years since that expedition, clothing has come a long way. Some of you who live in colder places, New Jersey, New York, Illinois, any place that's sort of wintry right now. I know we've got some groups from Texas here, so maybe this doesn't apply to you all the time, but you probably already know what I'm about to say. The best way to stay warm is to dress in layers. So that's what I'm doing. My clothes are all about layers on the top and the bottom. A lot of you have shirts that have this like athletic kind of fabric, this wicking fabric. If you wear this and you sweat underneath all of your layers of clothing, it takes that moisture right off of your body so you don't freeze, or it doesn't get cold and you get, or when you get wet, you don't get cold. On top of that, you can do another sort of base layer. This is just a long sleeve, thin, light wool layer that will help keep me warm. On top of that, you can do something like a fleece, like a mid-layer fleece that's a little bit thicker. You might think of it like a sweatshirt. And then over the top of that, you can wear a big waterproof, windproof winter parka. And if it gets a little bit warmer, I can take the parka off. I'm still very comfortable. If it gets a little colder, I can zip it a little bit tighter. It allows for lots of different weather conditions. So on the bottom, it's the same thing. You have, long underwear, thin wicking material that pulls any sweat off of your body, so it keeps your legs nice and warm. You have these are kind of like jogging pants. Fleece, nice warm fleece pants that are my mid layer for the bottoms. And then I'll wear something kind of like a big snow pants over the top, big waterproof, windproof snow pants that go over the top. And then of course on the bottom, I'll have those boots ready to go. So that's it for clothing. I think about clothing because I really want to be warm. That seems like a good thing to be. And that's what takes up most of the room in my bag right now. There are other things, though, that I'm going to have to do while I'm down there, and I've had to think through. For example, the S.A. Agulhas, our ice-breaking ship, is a South African ship, and all of the electricity on the ship is in a format that is used in South Africa. So, picked up one of these. Look at those prongs at the end. You probably recognize this. Very standard plug for electricity, right, in the United States. Now, everything I'm bringing that needs electricity to charge, my laptop for hosting live stream events with you, charging my cell phone, will need to plug into something like that, but that is what actually goes into the socket in South Africa or on a South African ship. So this is a really small but important piece of gear. Another thing I'm bringing, and this is pretty unique to polar regions where everything is covered in ice or snow. Everything is white. Beautiful, right? It's going to be absolutely beautiful, but it does present a challenge with your eyes because in the summer, when the sun is coming down on that ice, on that frozen over section of the Weddell Sea, all of that sun bounces right off the white of the snow and the ice and right into your eyes. So it's very, very bright. It's like having a spotlight shining in your eyes at all times. So there are special sunglasses, and sunglasses are a really essential piece of gear. Look at these, they're huge, right? There's nothing getting in here. There's little flaps on the side that keep the sunlight from coming in on the side. these completely protect my eyes. They will keep all those really bright rays from the sun that are bouncing off the ice from getting in my eyes. If you don't do this, if you don't take special precaution with your eyesight and your vision in polar regions, you get something called snow blindness, which I have never had, but people who have been to polar regions and have experienced it say it's really, really painful and bad and you don't want it. So it's easy enough to prevent against it if you plan ahead of time. Oh, my cat's coming to say hello. If you plan ahead of time and you bring the right gear. Now, it's not going to be all, well, let me do one more thing. One of the other things I'm doing as part of this virtual exchange is hosting live stream events. And when we're way, way, way down off the coast of Antarctica, sometimes it can be hard to be connected to the internet, to other people. There are ways of doing it. We use satellite communications instead of cellular communications like you might use when you use a cell phone. But I have this really cool high-tech piece of gear that I wanted to show you. It's about the size of a notebook. Not much bigger than that, not very heavy. And this is a mobile internet device that allows me to connect with you from the ice. I can set this up on the ice. It will beam up to satellites that are far, far away. It will create an internet connection so I can get on my cell phone and I can open up a Zoom app and I can share the experience of being on the ice or being amongst penguins or being at the ice camp for the expedition with all of you. Light, but very powerful and essential piece of gear for me. Now, it's not going to be all work while I'm in the Antarctic. And there are a couple things I'm bringing that are kind of just fun things that I want to explore, things that I want to try. And one of those is this. It kind of looks like a chocolate bar to you, perhaps. This is a really unique special food item called Pemmican. And if any of you have read about polar exploration or you have read about Ernest Shackleton, you know that pemmican was something that he and many explorers bring with them when they don't have a reliable source of fresh food. And pemmican was definitely aboard the Endurance on its expedition. And I'm bringing some, not because it's something people eat that much these days. It's kind of, I don't think people eat it that much these days, but I want to try it because I feel like it will help me feel a connection to Shackleton. The 3 ingredients of pemmican, there's some variation, but the ingredients are beef fat, and dried cranberries. So if you were looking at this thinking this was chocolate, maybe you think differently now. But the benefit of that is that it's going to give me lots of calories. It's supposed to fill you up, keep you healthy, and it doesn't ever expire. So one of the things I'm looking forward to is trying this as part of the expedition. And I think with that, there's just one other thing I want to show you. And for those of you who were paying close attention to the newsletter this week, I'm going to be bringing a mascot with me down to the Antarctic. And I want to introduce this mascot. This is my buddy. He or she is going to go with me wherever I go with the expedition. This fantastic creature is modeled after a Weddell seal, which is a very common animal in the Weddell Sea, Weddell seal. And one of the things that we're excited to do with you all is to give this fantastic seal a name. He or she does not have a name yet. We don't even know if it's a he or a she yet. We need your help coming up with a name for this seal, so that as we go down and as we go down to Antarctica and as the seal appears wherever I go, we can give it a name and it can go on the adventure with us. So each of your teachers has a link for submitting a seal name from your class, and we'll vote on the winner over the next couple days. But here it is. All right, so I've shown you a lot of things. I've talked to you a little bit about how I think about packing for an expedition of this nature. It takes a lot of planning. The people who have been planning this expedition have been working on it for years. I've been packing for this expedition for months, and the exciting thing for me is that it's all about to happen. All of that hard work is all of a sudden, and it seems like it's crept up on me. It's happening starting for me on Sunday when I fly out for South Africa. Hopefully I didn't forget anything, but in case I did, I'm bringing a little bit of money that I'm going to convert into South African Rand, which is the currency that is used both in Cape Town and on the ship. And I'll have a chance to say I forgot a toothbrush, which I won't, but I could buy a toothbrush if I really needed to. But the thing is, in the Weddell Sea, there's no Target, there's no Walmart, there's no Costco right around the corner. Everything you're going to have and everything you're going to use, you have to bring with you. So very, very important to pack smartly and plan ahead.
Thank you, Tim. And I think we should leave some time for some questions from our classroom. I already see some wonderful questions in the chat from YouTube. If you want to ask a question on camera, please raise your hand using the raise hand function in Zoom, and I will call on somebody. So I first have a question, it looks like from Ms. Pause's class. So whoever has a question there, why don't you come right up to the camera? You can introduce yourself, tell us where your school is, and then ask your question.
Tyler, does the ship have something to protect it from animals? Like if an animal tries to come up?
Yeah. Hey, Tyler. Nice to meet you. Thanks for asking your question. The ship is made out of really, really heavy steel. It is like really, really strong ship. It's meant to crush through ice, actually meant to break ice, but there's nothing, the way the ship sits on the water makes it rise way above the water level. So there's no real way that any animal that's on the ice or in the water could get into the ship unless it's a bird. It's more, the more interesting sort of way to think about this question is, how are we protecting the animals from the ship? And the expedition team is going to be very, very careful to stay away from all of the whales that are breeding, having babies in the Weddell Sea right now. It's a very special time of year for whales. We're going to be doing everything we can to stay away from the penguins and the seals. They're very, very curious, and we will be very careful not to touch them.
Thank you. Do you have time for another? Do you want to go to another class and be back?
We'll come back to you guys. Tyler, really quick before you go, what is the name of your school and where is it?
What's the name of our school?
George White.
And where do we live?
Hillsdale.
Hillsdale where?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Right.
Thank you all for joining us. So I'm going to take a question now from our chat. And this is Aaliyah. I'm not sure what school she is from. Aaliyah from Northside Community School, 2nd grade. And Aaliyah wants to know, how cold is it in Antarctica right now?
That is a very good question, Aaliyah. Thank you so much for asking. I grew up in this part of the United States, so I'm used to some pretty cold temperatures. And one of the things that I'm really excited to see is how cold does it feel in the Antarctic. I know that when I cross from the northern hemisphere, where Chicago is, and where all of us are right now, into the southern hemisphere, I'm going to be switching seasons. So when it's winter up here, it is summer currently in Cape Town, and it's going to be pretty nice. I've heard it's in the 80s this week, which I'm sort of looking forward to. But then as soon as we get on the ship and we cross the southern Atlantic and we get into the Weddell Sea, I'm expecting the temperatures to be somewhere around the freezing point in the high 20s, the low 30s. And from what I've heard from people who have spent a lot of time in this area, it can get much, much colder than that. It can get maybe a little bit warmer than that, but depending on the weather, summer in the Weddell Sea is somewhere around the high 20s, low 30s Fahrenheit.
Thank you, Tim. And you also answered the second part of Aaliyah's question about the weather in South Africa right now. And so it's summer in both places, but there's a pretty massive contrast between the two. And it looks like we have a question from Miss Sargent's class. So let's take that question next.
What happens if the boat sinks?
Good question. Well, we know that happened. Sorry, who's asking?
Tell him your name and what school we're from.
Braylon Satori.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Braylon.
Rylan?
Braylon from
Braylon. Excellent.
Satori in Texas.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for asking. I think that's a really good question because we all know what happened in Endurance, right? We wouldn't be going to look for it if it hadn't sunk. So that was 100 years ago. In the 100 years since, or 107 years actually, since the Endurance sank, the technology behind ships that are traveling through this part of the world has increased dramatically. I can't wait to show you the Aegolus 2 and all the things that it can do. It is a massive ship. It is really, really strong. It's got 2 layers of steel in some places, and it's constantly monitored so that they can judge how much stress is on the hull or the outside of the ship as it's cutting through really icy areas. I don't expect the Aegolus to sink. I don't think anyone does. The ship goes back and forth between the Weddell Sea several times a year. It typically supplies research scientists who are living and doing their work on Antarctica, on the Antarctic continent. So the ship will not sink. I can say that fairly certainly, and it's because it has gotten so much stronger over the years. At the same time, every expedition has to think about what the plan would be if something went in a way that they weren't expecting. So there's a very comprehensive plan in place. I have done a lot of safety training. There are lifeboats, there are survival suits, there are helicopters, there are all sorts of ways that if we got into some kind of trouble, that we'd be able to get help. We'll be in constant touch with South Africa and with any sort of a rescue agency. So we have taken precautions, but I feel very confident that the Aegolus is a strong enough ship to make it through the Weddell Sea. On that note, though, I do think that it's possible that the Aegolus will at some point get stuck in the ice. And I think the important thing to remember is that it has ways of getting out of the ice, and it's totally natural to get stuck in the ice, just like the Endurance did. The difference is that the Aegolus will not get crushed by the ice.
Thank you, Tim. We have lots of questions. Do we have time for a few more? Great. So I see that Ms. Latore's class has had their hand up for a while. Let's go there next before I take another question from the chat. So student from Ms. Latore's class, come right up to camera.
Yeah. Say who you are. Say your name.
I'm Josephine,
And where's that school?
and I am in Lincoln Elementary School in New Jersey, Hasbrook Heights.
Hi, Josephine. Nice to meet you.
What would you do if you lost all your connection to the outside world and you got stuck just like Ernest Shackleton did?
That's a really good question. And I think about that, especially when I read Shackleton's diary or accounts of his journey. Can you imagine how alone they felt at the bottom of the world? And they knew that nobody knew they were in trouble and nobody knew what was happening to them. I feel fairly confident that we will be able to stay in touch with our families, the rest of you, because of the amazing satellite communications equipment that we have. But if
Electronics.
what about electronics?
What if you lost all of them and you couldn't contact the outside world?
Sure. Yeah. If it was let's say, for example, it was a really cloudy day or a storm was happening in the Weddell Sea, it's totally possible that we wouldn't for a while be able to connect with satellites. It's the equivalent of losing your electronics. And I think it would feel very lonely. I think you'd feel like you were a long way away from other people. And I think we will anyway. But if we just sort of keep calm and remember that this equipment is designed for these conditions, I feel very, very confident that within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be back in touch with people. And if we needed any sort of assistance, we could get a hold of them.
The other thing is that there's people like me who are back in the US or in the UK or wherever all of our crew members are from, who are talking with the ship every day and who are monitoring everything that's going on. And if I don't hear from Tim for 48 hours, I'm going to know that something is wrong, and I'm going to have to alert authorities and make sure that people know that something might have gone wrong down in the Weddell Sea. Because there are a lot of eyes on this expedition. There's a lot of ways to follow it live. When Shackleton and his expedition got stranded, that wasn't true. There was not news coverage following the expedition. There weren't daily updates from the ship. It was very hard for people to know what was going on. And so it will be very obvious to the people back at home if they lose touch with the people on the expedition that something is going wrong. I'm going to take another question from the chat. We have a question from Estrella at PS1 in Brooklyn, New York. Estrella wants to know if you have spikes at the bottom of your boots.
That's a really good question. And I think that they would really come in handy in certain situations where things are icy. I know that you have to have boots with good grip on the deck of a ship because it sometimes gets wet with mist coming over the edge of the side of the ship, and you don't want to slip. There's lots of ways that accidents could happen there. So my boots do have, let me show you, do have pretty good traction. They're designed for snowy, icy scenarios. I do not have spikes. Most of the time when I see spikes on the bottom of shoes or boots, it's because people are trying to climb something icy or snowy, and I'm not going to be doing any climbing. But if I was, I would definitely want to be packing some spikes for my boots.
Thank you, Tim. If we have time, we'll take one or two more questions from our classrooms on camera. I see that Ms. Brancato's class has had their hand up for a few minutes. So let's take a question from Ms. Brancato's class.
Hi, I'm Joshua Quintero. I'm in Hasbrook Heights, Lincoln School. What would
Hey, Joshua.
happen? Hi. What would happen if what would you do after if you found the Endurance or not?
Yeah, it's what all of this effort has been towards, right? All of us who are joining the expedition and are packing and preparing, that's why we're doing it. That's the reason that's driving us to do all of these things, is that we really, really want to find this ship. It would be so exciting. I am confident that the people who are leading this search, not me, others who are really, really talented at that sort of thing, are giving us the best possible chance of finding the ship. And I just know that everybody who is on board the ship, and so many of you who are following along around the world, will really feel that excitement when we discover this ship that's been buried underneath the sea for so long. The important thing, and you can find more information about this in some other Reach the World live stream events, especially most recently with marine archaeologist Menson Bound, is that we're not going to touch the ship in any way. The ship stays right where it is. It's a protected monument. We can look around, we can take lots of pictures, we can take lots of videos, we can make a really great map of the wreck site, but we're not going to touch it. We're not going to bring anything up from the surface. It's going to stay where it is. It brings up the point too that there's a whole separate team that's leading that search underwater, and they have their own packing your bags visualization to go through. They need to bring all the marine robots. They need to bring spare light bulbs. They need to bring extra cords. They need to bring all of the things they need to make those marine robots work, because if one of those things breaks when you're in the Weddell Sea, you can't run to Walmart, you can't place an Amazon order. You have to use what you have available. So they're thinking through packing their bags at the same time as me, but in a different way.
Thank you. And then I have a very quick follow-up from PS1 in Brooklyn. Do we know the Endurance's sinking coordinates?
We do know the Endurance sinking coordinates. One of the people on board Shackleton's expedition used a navigation tool called a sextant to get the latitude and longitude of the spot where the ship sank. I learned recently that the day the ship actually sank was kind of cloudy, so he couldn't get the exact coordinates that day. So he took the coordinates the next day and sort of calculated back a little bit where they were the day before. So while we know roughly where it is, we don't know exactly. We pretty much know, like if you were looking for like a missing glove, we'd know the room to look in. We might not know the specific, you wouldn't have to search the whole house. You could just look in this one room and it gives you a really good chance of finding it. And we don't know the exact like corner of the room.
It's a great explanation. Thank you, Tim. Another question from the chat from Mr. Juister's class in Illinois. Matthew wants to know what jet lag feels like since you're about to embark on a very long transatlantic flight.
That's a good question, Matthew. Thank you for asking. I am trying to avoid getting COVID-19 during my travels. So one of the things I did, and this will be especially for my new friends in New Jersey, I'm coming to New Jersey on Sunday. I'm flying to Newark. I will be coming through your part of the country. And there is one flight, exactly one flight that leaves from the United States and flies directly with no stops all the way to Cape Town, South Africa. It is a 15-hour flight. For any of you who have ever had an hour or two flight, if you've been on an airplane before, you might know what that feels like. But 15 hours is a long time. You can watch a couple movies, but what I'm really going to be doing, since it goes overnight, is trying my best to sleep so that when I get to Cape Town and I'm 7 hours ahead of the time zone that I'm in right now, that change in time zones doesn't mess up my body and make me tired during the day and awake at night. And that is essentially what jet lag is. I've been on many long flights like that before. I know it's tricky. There's not a lot you can do, but trying to get some sleep on an airplane and not watch all the movies and eat all the snacks, but get some sleep is usually the best way to go. I would describe jet lag as like a headache, feeling tired, kind of the feeling like you just stayed up all night and you're just a little bit groggy and fuzzy and out of it. And it's not a great feeling, but if you get a little bit of rest, and after a day or two, it goes away.
Great, thanks, Tim. And I think we have time for one last question. I haven't gotten to Mrs. Schaefer's class yet. So if we have a student with a question there, we can end on that.
Hello, I'm Madison.
Hi, Madison.
My question is, what are you most excited about going on this trip?
Ooh, that is a really, really good question. Since I was your age, I have always wanted to go on adventures like this. It has been just my favorite thing to do. I get so excited. I get butterflies in my stomach. I can't wait. The night before my airplane takes off, I cannot wait. And this is like, if you can imagine like having a favorite story and all of a sudden getting to live it yourself. That's how I feel about this expedition right now. I'm getting to go someplace in the world I've always wanted to see. I'm getting to meet people who are really interesting. I'm getting to have an adventure, have this fun. I think of it kind of like a treasure hunt, with the wreck being a treasure. Like, I love history, and the ability to be connected to all of those things at once is just a dream come true for me. So everything about it is the answer to your question. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions, and that is about all the time that we have today. For those of you who's had questions that they didn't get to answer yet, we will definitely have more live stream events featuring Tim and featuring other members of the Endurance 22 expedition. And you can also read about Tim's preparations at reachtheworld.org/endurance22. And there's an article about how he prepared and some of the medical surveys and different things that he had to do. Now, lastly, don't forget that you all have the opportunity to name our mascot, our Weddell seal stuffed animal that will be going on the expedition with Tim. Now, we haven't decided whether this seal is a boy or a girl. We haven't given it a name. That is all up to you. And your teachers all know how to help you suggest names. And then we'll vote on whose name we actually choose next week online. Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you all of the classrooms for joining us today. We can't wait to see you on more live stream events and more Endurance 22 events. And we hope that in the meantime, you check out all of the amazing articles that our expedition team members are creating on our expedition page. Again, that's reachtheworld.org/endurance22.
Thanks, everyone. It's so great to meet you. I can't wait to take you to Antarctica with me.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.